She was
Wait.
closing the pub when the Alpha King sat down. One last drink. The road was empty, save for the occasional shadow of a traveler seeking shelter. Inside, warm light flickered from the hearth, casting long, golden shadows along the wooden walls. Leora wiped down the last table, her hands tired but steady. The smell of wood smoke, ale, and wet earth filled the room, comforting her after a long day. She was used to closing the pub alone, used to the quiet that came after the last drink was served. Her life was simple, but in the simplicity lay safety, an island of calm in a world that often seemed cruel and unpredictable. She glanced at the clock. Midnight. Almost time to lock the door and finally rest. Outside, the storm grew louder, thunder rolling across the hills like the roar of some ancient beast. Leora shook her head and muttered softly, "Another quiet night as always." Then the door opened. A gust of wind tore through the pub, carrying rain, leaves, and the scent of something strange, sharp, cold, and yet oddly familiar. Leora's heart skipped. She had never seen anyone arrive so quietly, so deliberately in the middle of a storm. He stepped inside, tall, broad, a shadow among shadows, yet his presence filled the room as though the storm itself had followed him. His dark cloak dripped with rain, and his hair, black as night, clung to his face. But it was his eyes that drew her attention, eyes like storm clouds, deep and impossible to read, carrying a weight that made her chest tighten. "I can help you," Leora said cautiously, setting the rag aside. Her voice sounded smaller than she intended. The man smiled, though it did not reach his eyes. "Perhaps," he said, his voice low and smooth, "but I do not need help. I need a drink." Something about the way he said it made Leora hesitate. He did not ask. He stated as if his presence alone demanded it. Most travelers would not dare speak to her this way. Most would not enter her quiet pub like a storm made flesh. "One last drink," he added, almost teasing, yet there was an edge in his tone, something sharp and commanding. Leora felt a shiver, not from the cold but from the pull of something she could not name. Against her better judgment, she poured him a glass of the strongest ale she had. He took it in one smooth motion, his gaze never leaving her. "Kale," he said, placing the glass on the counter with deliberate care. "I am Kale." The name struck her strangely, like a bell she had heard long ago but could not remember. Her fingers tightened around the rag. "Kale," she repeated, testing it on her tongue. There was power in that name, authority, danger, and sorrow. "Do I know you?" she asked cautiously, though a part of her feared the answer. He leaned forward, elbows on the counter, eyes shadowed by the flickering light. "Not yet, but I know you." The words made her stomach tighten. There was a weight to them, a truth she could not ignore. He did not look like an ordinary man. There was something about him, something wild, almost inhuman. Leora poured herself a small cup of tea as if she could shield herself behind routine. "You've traveled far," she said carefully, "and in this storm. Why come here to this lonely place?" Kale's lips curved slightly. "Because this place is small, quiet, safe. And sometimes what is quiet hides the greatest secrets." Her heartbeat quickened. There was knowledge in his tone, knowledge of things she had never told anyone, not even her mother who had disappeared long ago. Leora swallowed hard. "Secrets are dangerous," she said. "And yet," Kale replied, "you live among them. Do they frighten you?" She wanted to answer, wanted to say yes, but found herself silent. There was a force in his presence that demanded honesty, whether she wished to give it or not. He was not just a man, she realized. He was something older, something stronger, and somehow he had come for her. The fire crackled and shadows danced across Kale's face. For a moment, Leora thought she saw a scar, faint and silvered, running down his cheek. A mark of battles survived, of life lived in ways that left no room for ordinary happiness. She wanted to look away, to pretend he was just another traveler, but she could not. She was drawn to him, despite every warning in her mind. "You know my name," she said softly, almost accusingly. Kale's eyes darkened. "I know more than your name. I know the blood that runs through you, the secrets you guard, the magic you do not yet understand. The words sent a shiver down her spine. Magic. She had always sensed it, small things, little hints of power she could not explain, but she had kept it hidden. Her mother had warned her never to trust it, and yet here was a man who knew it and who did not fear it. "Who are you?" she asked, her voice steadier than she felt. "I am the Alpha King," he said simply. No pride, no arrogance, just truth, as though stating it could make her understand what she could not yet grasp. The pub grew still. Even the storm outside seemed to hold its breath. Leora's mind raced. The Alpha King, the ruler of the cursed kingdom across the forest. Stories of his cruelty, his power, his isolation. She had heard them all. And yet here he was, standing before her, human and yet not entirely human, as if the legends themselves had stepped from shadow into flesh. "I should leave," she whispered. "People will talk if they see you here." Cale shook his head, a faint smile playing at his lips. "Let them talk. Tonight no one matters but us." She wanted to refuse him. Wanted to close the pub, lock the door, and pretend none of this had happened. But something in her, a part she did not fully understand, wanted to listen, wanted to hear more. The firelight flickered across his face, and for a moment the storm outside faded. She could see the loneliness there, the weight of centuries in his gaze. "You are tired," she said, almost as if speaking to herself. Cale looked at her, and for the first time he seemed vulnerable. "I am tired of being feared," he said quietly, "tired of being alone. And tonight I seek more than drink. I seek truth. I seek a soul brave enough to see me as I am." Leora's chest tightened. She had spent her life hiding, surviving. She had never imagined meeting someone who carried so much darkness and still sought light. The clock struck 12. The storm outside was louder now, rattling the windows and doors. Cale's eyes met hers, unwavering, demanding. "Leora," he said, leaning closer, his voice dropping to a whisper. "Do you know the name of the woman who walked the forest long before your time? The one who bore the blood of kings and witches alike?" Her breath caught. Her mother's stories, the old legends she had dismissed as bedtime tales. "Who?" she faltered. Cale's hand moved slowly, deliberately, and placed something on the counter, a small, silver locket, engraved with symbols she recognized from her childhood. Symbols her mother had drawn, symbols that carried warnings. "This belonged to her," Cale said softly. "And now it belongs to you." Leora's fingers trembled as she picked up the locket. The metal was cold, almost alive. Her mind raced with questions she dared not speak aloud. How did he know? Why had he come? And most terrifying of all, why did her heart feel as if it had known him forever? Cale leaned back slightly, studying her as if seeing her for the first time. "You are more than you think," he said quietly, "and I am not the monster the stories claim. But the night is long and secrets are patient. You will learn soon enough." The wind howled outside, carrying with it the scent of rain and something older, older than the forest, older than the mountains. Leora felt a shiver run through her body, not from cold, but from the undeniable truth that her life had changed in the blink of an eye. She wanted to speak, to ask the questions crowding her mind. But Cale stood, the shadow of the Alpha looming larger, almost unreal in the flickering firelight. "Stay for a moment," he said, voice low and steady. "One drink, one night, and perhaps answers will come. Or perhaps you will find a destiny you cannot yet imagine." Leora nodded slowly. She poured him another drink, her hands trembling despite herself. The fire crackled, thunder rolled, and the storm outside seemed to echo the storm in her own heart. Cale raised his glass to hers. "To secrets," he said, "and to the courage to face them." She met his gaze, unable to look away. "To courage," she repeated, almost in a whisper. The glass clinked, soft and final, and in that sound something shifted. Something old and forgotten stirred in the air, something that had been waiting for this night, for this meeting. Leora's heart raced. She did not yet know what was coming, did not yet understand the gravity of the man before her. but she knew one thing with certainty: her life would never be the same. And as Kale leaned closer, his voice barely more than a shadow of a whisper, he spoke a name that made her blood freeze. "I've been looking for you all your life." Outside, lightning struck the forest. The pub shuddered. And inside, the night had only just begun. The storm had passed, leaving the world outside wet and glistening under a pale, uncertain moon. Inside the pub, the fire crackled quietly, casting shadows that danced across the walls like ghosts of forgotten legends. Leora sat behind the counter, her fingers tracing the edge of the silver locket Kale had left in her hand the previous night. She could still feel the weight of it, not just the cold metal, but the weight of history, of secrets that seemed older than time itself. Kale was gone when she awoke, though she knew he had not gone far. He had a way of appearing and disappearing as if the night itself obeyed his command. She tried to focus on her morning tasks, sweeping floors, arranging bottles and lighting the hearth, yet her thoughts were pulled back to him. To the intensity in his storm-gray eyes, the way he had spoken her name as though it belonged to him, the way he had claimed knowledge of her bloodline. The villagers avoided the pub that morning. Whispers followed her as she moved through the streets, their voices low and cautious. The alpha king in the pub in our village, they feared him. They feared what they did not understand. And though Leora did not fully understand him either, a strange warmth had taken root inside her, a pull she could not ignore. By midday, Kale returned. He stepped through the door without knocking, dripping rainwater on the floor as if the storm itself had followed him. His eyes were fixed on her, piercing yet distant. "You kept the locket," he said simply, as though reading her thoughts. "I didn't know what else to do," Leora replied, her voice steady despite the fluttering in her chest. "It felt important." Kale nodded, moving to sit at the counter. The pub seemed to shrink around him, his presence commanding the space as if he alone filled it. "It is important," he said, "because it connects us. To the past, to what is coming, to the truth you have yet to accept." Leora hesitated, gripping the edge of the counter. "I don't understand. Why me? Why now?" "Because the blood that flows through you is the same blood that can break the chains of my curse," Kale said, his voice softer now, almost vulnerable. "I have lived centuries in isolation, bound by a power that is not fully my own. And you are the one who might free me or doom us both." The words hung in the air, heavy with meaning. Leora felt a shiver crawl down her spine. She had sensed her own strength for years, small flickers of power she could not explain. She had always hidden it, afraid of what might happen if anyone discovered the truth. But Kale's words made the fear seem smaller than the destiny that awaited her. "What do you mean by chains?" she asked, her curiosity now stronger than her fear. Kale's eyes darkened. He leaned closer, the firelight catching the sharp lines of his face. "Long ago I made a choice that cost me everything. My family, my people, my freedom. A curse was laid upon me, one that grows stronger with every act of anger, every lapse of control. I am bound by it. My strength, my life, my very soul is chained. And only one with the blood of the old line can undo it." Leora felt her breath catch. Her mother had told stories of the old line, of kings and witches intertwined, of magic so strong it could change the fate of kingdoms. She had never thought it was real. And yet here was Kale, the Alpha King, standing before her, proof that it was. "I don't know if I can," she began, then stopped. How could she, a simple caretaker of a pub, hope to wield the kind of power Kale described? Kale placed his hand over hers, and for a moment the warmth of his skin made her forget everything else, the storm, the village, even herself. "You already have it," he said quietly. "You only need to believe it." Before she could answer, a sudden crash came from outside. The door rattled as though something powerful had struck it. Leora froze. Kale's expression hardened instantly, the calmness of moments before replaced with the alertness of a predator. "Stay here," he commanded, moving toward the door. His voice was both warning and protection, and Leora felt a strange mix of fear and relief. She watched him step into the night. The forest beyond the village was alive, shadows twisting unnaturally. Then she saw it, a dark shape moving with speed and precision, eyes glinting in the moonlight. A wolf, larger than any ordinary beast, its fur black as midnight, its teeth gleaming. It circled the pub, snarling, marking its territory with a presence that sent shivers down Leora's spine. Kale's form shifted before her eyes. His back straightened, muscles tense, and then, almost impossibly, his shadow grew, stretched, as he seemed to become something more than human. The air itself seemed to hum around him, charged with a power that made the hairs on Leora's arms stand on end. The wolf lunged, but Kale met it with a strength that seemed drawn from the very earth beneath their feet. The clash of power shook the ground. Leora, unable to tear her eyes away, felt her own pulse quicken. She wanted to scream, to intervene, yet something inside her told her to watch, to learn, to remember. When the battle ended moments later, Kale stood victorious, though a faint trickle of blood ran along his arm. The wolf lay still, its eyes dimming like fading embers. Kale turned to her, his storm-gray eyes softening, and offered a small, reassuring smile. "You are safe," he said, his voice low. "But the danger is not gone. The forest, it watches. It knows who you are, and it will test us." Leora's hands trembled and she clutched the locket tightly. She had never seen such power, such ferocity, and yet she had never felt so drawn to someone before. What was that?" she whispered. "That," Kale said, his gaze distant, "was only a shadow of what lies ahead. The curse that binds me has many guardians, creatures who have waited centuries to test my strength, and now they will test yours." The words sent a shiver down her spine. Leora had always thought she was alone, protected by the quiet of her life. Now she realized that the world was far larger, far stranger, and far more dangerous than she had ever imagined. Kale stepped closer, lowering his voice to a whisper that carried through the still air of the pub. "You have power, Leora, hidden but real. Tonight you saw a glimpse of what I can do. Imagine what you could do if you embraced what is inside you." She wanted to argue, to deny it, but she could feel it, the pulse of magic in her veins, awakened by the events of the night. The locket seemed to hum faintly, as if responding to the presence of her own power. "Magic in me?" she asked, disbelief and wonder warring in her voice. "Yes," Kale said. "Your blood carries the mark of the old line. It has been dormant for too long, but the bond between us, it has awakened it. The forest, the storm, even the wolves, they sense it. They know you are different, and they will come for you unless you learn to defend yourself." Leora felt a surge of fear, quickly followed by determination. She had never imagined herself a hero, never imagined she could wield power like this, yet something inside her stirred. She would not run, not from this, not from him, not from herself. Kale studied her, the intensity of his gaze softening. "Tonight, you have seen what I am capable of, but there is more, Leora. There is a darkness in me that even I cannot fully control. I have lived with it for centuries, hiding it behind a mask of authority, behind fear and legend. But with you, I feel the first stirrings of hope, perhaps even redemption." Her heart ached at his words, torn between fear and longing. The man before her was both terrifying and mesmerizing, bound by a curse that seemed impossible to break, yet somehow fragile in her presence. A sudden movement outside drew their attention. The shadows of the forest shifted unnaturally, and Leora felt a chill run through her. A figure emerged from the darkness, a woman cloaked in midnight, her face hidden beneath a hood. She moved with an eerie grace, her presence both beautiful and threatening. Kale stiffened. "She knows," he muttered. "She has come for answers, for control. And she will not leave until she gets them." The woman raised a hand, and the air seemed to shimmer. Leora felt the pulse of magic respond within her, faster and stronger than before. The locket around her neck glowed faintly, as if calling to her, warning her. Kale stepped protectively in front of her. "Stay behind me," he said, his voice low and firm. "This is not a fight you are ready for, not yet." The woman's voice cut through the night, calm and cold. "Alpha King," she said, "you cannot hide forever, and the girl, she is the key. Give her to me and perhaps your curse will remain manageable. Refuse and she will suffer the consequences of your pride." Leora's stomach tightened. She felt fear, yes, but also a strange defiance. She would not let this stranger, this emissary of darkness, dictate her fate. Kale's hand brushed hers, a silent reassurance, a promise. "You are stronger than you realize, Leora, and together we can face whatever comes. But you must trust me. You must trust yourself." The woman raised her hands, and the shadows of the forest began to move toward them, as if alive. The tension was unbearable. Leora could feel her own power thrumming, responding to Kale's presence, to the threat before them. And then, just as the first tendrils of darkness reached the edge of the pub, the locket around her neck flared with a brilliant light, bright enough to make the shadows recoil. The mysterious woman hissed, stepping back, her control faltering. Kale's eyes met hers, and in that moment Leora understood. She was not just an observer, she was a participant, a force in her own right, and together they could stand against whatever darkness came their way. But as the woman vanished into the shadows with a promise of return, Kale said softly, almost to himself, "This is only the beginning, Leora. The curse is old and its guardians are patient. We have much to face, and the forest is watching." Leora nodded, clutching the locket tightly. She felt fear, yes, but also something new, purpose. The storm had passed, but the real darkness, the challenge, the adventure, the destiny, was only just beginning. And as the first light of dawn touched the village, Leora realized that her life, her very soul, was now entwined with the Alpha King's. There would be danger, there would be fear. But there would also be power, courage, and perhaps something she had never dared to hope for: love. The forest beyond the village was alive with whispers. Not the wind, not the rustling of leaves, but something older, watching, waiting, and aware. Leora had never felt the forest like this before. It pulsed with energy, shadowed corners shifting in ways that made her skin prickle. She clutched the silver locket around her neck as if it were a shield, and yet it felt more like a key, unlocking powers she had never understood. Kale walked beside her, tall and silent, his presence both comforting and terrifying. He moved with the confidence of a predator and the caution of a king who had been betrayed too many times. Leora kept pace, her steps quick but careful. Though she had been frightened the night before, she now felt a strange determination. She had to understand the magic within her. She had to help him break his curse. "The forest tests those it considers dangerous," Kale said, his voice cutting through the quiet. "It is alive with the power of old magic, and it will not forgive weakness." "I'm not sure I even know what weakness is anymore," Leora admitted, her voice barely a whisper. Her heart pounded, not with fear but with anticipation. Kale glanced at her, his eyes stormy and unreadable. "Strength is not just power, it is control, patience, understanding. And above all, loyalty." They walked in silence, the path winding deeper into the forest. Strange shapes flickered at the edges of her vision, shadows that seemed almost human, almost alive. Leora's pulse quickened. Every instinct told her to run, but she did not. Kale's presence steadied her, even as it reminded her how small and mortal she truly was. After a while, they reached a clearing where the moonlight fell in silver streams. Kale stopped, turning to her. "This is where I first felt the weight of the curse," he said quietly. "I was betrayed here centuries ago by someone I trusted. Since then I have learned to hide, to control, to survive. But the curse, it never sleeps, and now it reaches for you." Leora swallowed hard. "For me? Why?" "Because your blood is the same as mine," Kale explained. "Your magic is the missing piece, the part I cannot control alone. You can awaken it, or it can awaken against us. That is why I have brought you here." The clearing was quiet, but the air hummed with tension. Leora felt the pull of something deep within her, as though the forest itself were calling. She closed her eyes and concentrated, willing herself to feel the magic she had always sensed but never touched. At first, there was nothing. Then slowly, a warmth spread from her chest to her fingertips, and the locket around her neck glowed faintly, as if encouraging her. Kale's eyes softened slightly, though his usual intensity remained. "Good," he said. "You are stronger than you think. But strength without control is dangerous. Let me guide you." For the next hours, Kale taught her to focus, to sense the energy in the forest, to draw it into herself without letting it consume her. Leora felt her magic respond to his voice, to his presence, as if they were connected by an invisible thread. She was terrified, exhilarated, and strangely calm all at once. "You are ready," Kale said finally, his voice low. "But now comes the true test. The curse does not forgive mistakes. You will see it for yourself." Before she could ask what he meant, a rustling came from the edge of the clearing. Shadows coalesced into a form, a massive wolf, larger than any normal creature, its fur dark as midnight, eyes glowing with a sinister light. It moved with unnatural speed, circling them, snarling. Leora's pulse raced. "Another wolf?" she asked, fear and determination mingling in her voice. "This is no ordinary wolf," Kale said, his storm-gray eyes narrowing. "It is a guardian of the curse. It tests our strength, our trust, and our control. Stand behind me. Focus your magic. Do not panic." The wolf lunged, and Kale shifted almost imperceptibly into his alpha form. Shadows clung to him, muscles tensing, eyes glowing like embers in the night. The forest seemed to hold its breath as he met the wolf, their powers clashing in a storm of energy and fury. Leora closed her eyes, feeling the locket pulse against her chest. She concentrated, calling the magic within her, letting it flow through her hands, through her mind, through her very being. A barrier of light formed around Kale and herself, pushing back the wolf. It snarled, shaking the ground with its rage, but could not breach her shield. Kale's gaze met hers, storm meeting storm. "Good, you are ready. But remember, your power is part of me now. If you falter, we both fall." The wolf retreated into the shadows, snarling one last time before vanishing. Leora dropped to her knees, trembling with exhaustion and adrenaline. Her heart raced not just from fear, but from the thrill of realizing she could wield such power, could stand beside him, could protect him. Kale approached, placing a hand on her shoulder. "You have done well," he said quietly, "but this is only the beginning. The curse has many forms, many guardians, and many challenges. You must be prepared for what comes next." Leora looked up at him, her eyes wide. "I want to be prepared. I want to help you, but what if I fail?" Kale's expression softened. For a brief moment he seemed less the Alpha King and more a man who had carried too much pain for too long. "Then we rise together," he said. "And if we fall together. That is the bond we share now. Trust in it. Trust in yourself. Trust in me." The forest seemed to shift around them, shadows moving with quiet curiosity, as if acknowledging the bond forming between them. Leora felt a strange warmth in her chest, a sense of connection not just to Kale, but to something larger, something ancient and powerful. As they made their way back to the village, Kale's hand brushed hers, a simple touch, yet charged with meaning. Leora felt her heart race, a mixture of fear, longing, and something she could not name. She had never imagined herself drawn to someone so dangerous, so powerful, and yet so vulnerable. When they reached the edge of the village, the first light of dawn was breaking, painting the world in soft golds and silvers. Leora's hair was damp, her clothes marked by the night's trials, but her eyes were bright with determination. Kale stopped and looked at her, his gaze steady. "You have done more than survive tonight," he said. "You have begun to understand what it means to be part of the old line, part of something greater. But there is still much to face. The curse is patient. Its guardians are clever, and there are those who will come for you, not just me." Before Leora could respond, a sudden movement in the village square drew their attention. A group of cloaked figures emerged from the shadows, their faces hidden, their presence commanding. Leora's pulse quickened. She could feel the magic within them, twisted and dangerous, resonating with the curse that bound Kale. Kale stepped in front of her, protective, his eyes flashing with warning. "They are not ordinary villagers," he said. "They know of you. They know of your power. And they will not leave until they have tested it." The cloaked figures stopped at the edge of the square, their leader stepping forward. Her hood fell back, revealing sharp features and eyes that glinted like ice. Leora felt a shiver run through her. She knew that look. It was the same in the eyes of those who sought control, who sought to manipulate power for their own ends. "Alpha King," the woman said, her voice cold and precise. "You cannot hide, and the girl, she is the key. Give her to me and perhaps your curse will remain bearable. Refuse and she will pay the price of your defiance." Leora's stomach tightened. She could feel the pull of fear but also a spark of defiance. She would not let them dictate her fate. Not her, not Kale, not their bond. Kale's hand brushed hers again, a silent promise. "Stay close," he said. "Trust your power, trust yourself. And remember, you are not alone." The woman raised her hands and the shadows of the village seemed to come alive, moving toward them. Leora felt the magic within her respond, pulsing faster, brighter, stronger than ever before. The locket flared, casting light across the square, pushing back the darkness. The cloaked woman hissed, stepping back, her control faltering. Kale's eyes met hers, storm to storm, and Leora realized something profound. She was no longer a bystander. She was a force, a protector, a key to breaking the curse. But the threat had only begun. As the figures disappeared into the shadows, Kale said softly, almost to himself, "The curse is clever, patient, and relentless. We must be ready. And you, Leora, you must embrace what you are, because soon there will be no place to hide." Leora nodded, clutching the locket. Fear still lingered, but so did determination. The forest, the village, the curse, the Alpha King, they were all pieces of a story she was now part of, and she would not turn away. And as they walked back toward the pub, the first rays of sunlight glinting off the wet rooftops, Leora understood the truth she could no longer deny. Her life, her destiny, and her heart were now entwined with Kale's. The path ahead would be dangerous, the challenges many, but together, perhaps they could face anything. The forest watched, patient and silent, as if acknowledging the bond forming in the heart of its shadows. And somewhere deep within its darkness, the guardians of the curse stirred, waiting for the moment when they would strike again. The night had returned, darker than any she had seen before. The forest loomed around the village, its shadows deeper, its whispers sharper, as if every tree and stone were alive, waiting for the final test. Leora stood at the edge of the clearing with Kale, the silver locket resting over her heart. Her hands trembled slightly, but the warmth inside her told her she was ready. She could feel the magic coursing through her veins, steady and alive. She was no longer the quiet caretaker of a small pub. She was part of something greater, a force bound to an ancient prophecy, bound to the Alpha King who stood beside her. Kale's storm-gray eyes swept the forest. "This is it," he said quietly. "The final guardian, the last obstacle. If we fail, the curse will endure and more lives will be lost. But if we succeed, freedom is possible for me, for you, for the world that suffers under the shadow of the curse." Leora nodded. She had faced fear before, wolves, shadows, magic. But tonight, the weight of responsibility pressed heavier than ever. Yet she did not falter. She had Kale beside her, and together they were stronger than any darkness. A low growl echoed through the clearing, and from the shadows emerged a figure taller than any human, cloaked in black mist that seemed to writhe like smoke. Its face was hidden, but its presence radiated the same curse that had bound Kale for centuries. Leora felt her heart race, but she clenched the locket and drew her power inward, letting it flow from her core to her fingertips. Kale stepped forward, his form shifting, the shadows around him bending to his will. "Stay behind me," he said, his voice firm, protective. "Remember your training, focus." Leora drew a deep breath. She had learned patience, control, and courage. She had learned that her magic was not just power, it was a reflection of her heart. And her heart, she realized, was bound to Kale's. The Guardian moved with terrifying speed, circling them, testing their defenses. Its voice, a whisper like wind through dead leaves, spoke directly into their minds. "You are weak. You cannot defeat what is eternal." Kale's eyes darkened. "We are stronger than you think," he said aloud, and the ground beneath him trembled as his alpha power flared. Shadows swirled around him, black as night yet alive, protective and fierce. Leora raised her hands, letting her magic pulse through the locket. Light surged outward, intertwining with Kale's shadow, creating a barrier of energy that repelled the Guardian's attacks. Each clash of power shook the forest, leaves falling like sparks from a hidden fire. Leora's heart pounded, not from fear but from the exhilaration of finally wielding her full strength, standing side by side with the Alpha King. The Guardian hissed, retreating momentarily. Kale's storm-gray eyes met hers. "Now," he whispered, "together." Leora stepped forward, drawing a circle of light around them, her magic expanding in response to Kale's power. They moved as one, a single force of strength and resolve. The Guardian lunged, but the combined power of Kale's alpha energy and Leora's awakened magic struck true, surrounding it in a cage of radiant light. The shadows screamed and twisted, but they could not break free. Kale's voice rang through the clearing, commanding yet strained. "I accept my past, my mistakes, my failures. I claim my life. I claim my freedom." The Guardian shuddered, the darkness unraveling like smoke in wind. Leora felt the locket burn warmly against her chest, as if affirming her connection to Kale and the magic of their shared destiny. The Guardian shrieked, then dissolved into the night, leaving only silence and the soft rustling of the forest. Kale staggered slightly, exhausted but alive. Leora rushed to his side, her hands on his chest, feeling the steady beat of his heart. "You did it," she whispered, relief washing over her. "We did it," he corrected, his voice low but filled with wonder. "Together." The forest seemed to exhale, the shadows retreating, the whispers fading into the calm of the night. For the first time in centuries, Kale was free from the curse that had bound him, and Leora's power had proven not only real but vital. Kale looked at her, storm-gray eyes softening into something warmer, more human. "You have no idea what you've done," he said quietly. "You've not only freed me, you've changed everything. For me, for you, for all who feared what I have become." Leora shook her head, a small smile playing on her lips. "I just did what I had to do. I didn't want to let you face this alone." Kale reached out, gently taking her hand. The warmth of his touch spread through her like sunlight breaking through clouds. "And yet, in doing so, you have faced more than I could have asked. You are stronger than even I realized. Stronger than any curse, any darkness, any fear." They stood in the clearing, hand in hand, watching the first rays of dawn illuminate the forest. The air was calm now, the weight of centuries of darkness lifted, replaced with a sense of hope and renewal. "Leora," Kale said, his voice husky with emotion, "I have spent so long believing that no one could stand beside me, that no one could see me as I truly am. And now here you are. You've seen the worst of me, the darkest parts, and you've stayed, you've fought, you've believed." Tears welled in Leora's eyes, though she did not let them fall. "Kale, I never wanted to leave, not when you needed me. Not when I realized I could make a difference." A quiet smile broke across Kale's face, rare and unguarded. "Then perhaps this is the beginning, not just for freedom from the curse, but for everything else, for life, for hope for us." The locket around Leora's neck glowed faintly, a soft reminder of the bond they now shared, the magic they had awakened together, and the destiny they had fulfilled. The air was alive with possibility, every shadow of the forest now serene, every whisper a song of renewal. For the first time, Leora allowed herself to truly see Kale, not as the Alpha King, the storm, or the cursed ruler, but as a man. A man who had suffered, who had loved, who had finally been given a chance at redemption. And in that moment she realized that she too had been transformed. She was no longer the quiet girl closing a pub. She was a woman of courage, of power, of heart, and she had chosen to walk beside him. Kale stepped closer, brushing a strand of damp hair from her face. "Stay with me," he whispered. "Not because the world needs us to fight, but because I want you with me, always." Leora felt her heart swell. She had fought fear, darkness, and uncertainty, and now she could embrace the warmth of hope, the thrill of love, and the promise of a shared future. "I will," she said softly. "I will stay." They stood together as the sun rose higher, painting the forest in golds and silvers. The world seemed brighter, softer, and yet more alive than ever before. They had faced curses, guardians, and shadows, and had emerged victorious, not just in battle, but in trust, in courage, and in love. Kale's hand tightened around hers. "The world is not yet done testing us," he said, his eyes reflecting both the forest and the rising sun. "But whatever comes, we will face it together, always." Leora nodded, a smile spreading across her face. "Together." The village stirred in the distance, unaware of the trials that had unfolded, unaware of the heroism that had saved them from the lingering curse. But the forest knew, the magic knew. And Kale and Leora, bound by destiny, by courage, by love, knew that they had survived, transformed, and risen stronger than ever. For the first time in centuries, the Alpha King was free. And for the first time in her life, Leora understood the full measure of her own strength. The wind whispered through the trees, carrying with it a promise. Darkness may always exist, but together, even the deepest shadows could be overcome. Kale and Leora walked back toward the village, side by side, their hands entwined, hearts aligned. The storm had ended. The curse had ended, and a new chapter, one of hope, courage, and love, had begun. As they approached the pub, the first light touched the windows, glinting off the silver locket, a reminder of trials survived and bonds forged. Leora glanced at Kale, and he met her gaze with a quiet, unspoken understanding. They had faced the impossible, and together they had risen. And somewhere deep within the forest, where shadows had once lingered, life hummed anew. The Alpha King and the girl who had closed the pub that fateful night were no longer separate from the magic, the legend, or the destiny that bound them. They were the living proof that light could rise from darkness, that courage could conquer fear, and that love could heal even the oldest curses. The forest sighed, the locket pulsed softly, and the world waited for their next adventure. But for now, peace reigned. And in that quiet dawn, Leora and Kale found not just freedom, but each other.